welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Wednesday, September 18th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Chris Towers. Today on the show, we have potential waiver wire options for the final week of the season. We have updates on 5 hitters who've recently returned to the majors, some early 2025 starting pitcher talk, and much more. Let's jump in.
Can you believe it? Wow!
All right, Chris, you are up. Player of the night.
And I said I would do Shane Baz, who had a very good start. He's a 2-start pitcher this week. Got the first one out of the way against Boston. 7 innings, 2 earned runs, 2 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, 18 whiffs on 96 pitches. And that feels like an especially big deal for Baz because while he has pitched well for the most part this season and coming back from Tommy John surgery, the strikeouts and the whiffs have not really been terribly impressive. And I want to be more optimistic about this start because he had 18 whiffs and 6 strikeouts in 7 innings, which is fine, but not great. But the 18 whiffs, that's great. 10 of them on the 4-seamer on 26 swings. That's really good. Everything else is still kind of not that impressive. 5 whiffs on 20 swings with the curveball. He was pounding the zone in this one, 60% in-zone contact rate or in-zone pitch rate overall for Shane Baz in this one. And I don't know. I started him in my big roto league this week with 2 starts. I'm happy that I did with this start. He's for the most part been quite solid this season, but when we're talking about projecting for 2025, I still can't quite figure out where I'm at on Shane Baz because what we've seen this season is the floor looks pretty high, right? Like he's managed a 3.21 ERA. The xERA is right around 3.70. So not quite as good, but playable. And that's without, big strikeout stuff. The question is, how likely is he to unlock enough upside to be more than just a high floor play, right? Like this was a guy who was at one point the top pitching prospect in baseball, came back from Tommy John surgery, and I don't know if I want to say I was hoping for more because obviously, look, a 3.21 ERA over half a season from a guy you picked up on waivers, that's awesome. He's been a great pickup. It just, I don't necessarily know if I see the ace upside that we were hoping for from Shane Baz.
Yeah, it does take a bit of a leap of faith and some projection for next season, but trusting in the prospect pedigree and Tampa Bay, which typically does do a good job with their pitchers, Shane Baz returning this year from Tommy John surgery. The last 6 starts have been great. 2.37 ERA, a .84 whip. The underlying numbers, not buying it at all, but the surface level numbers and the fact that, he's consistently going deep into his starts, he's pitched well overall, but he's also doing it in spite of his slider. He just hasn't had his slider. That's, years prior before Tommy John surgery looked like one of, if not his best pitch. Me thinking about next year, I think the Rays are going to find a way and Shane Baz to get that slider back on track. And if he does that, he's kind of giving you a glimpse, like you said, of the floor here. If he gets that slider back on track, I mean, the upside could be he's performs like a top 20 pitcher on a per start basis. I don't know how many starts he's actually going to give you, but
well, that's the thing is when you're talking about the upside case for him, I think you really need the upside to hit if you're talking about drafting Shane Baz next year, because I think there are certainly injury concerns, but also just volume concerns. Like, I don't know if I would really expect more than 150 innings from Shane Baz next season. And so
I wouldn't know.
If it's 150 innings of like a 3.50 ERA and less than a strikeout per inning, it's kind of like how worth it is it to chase that?
Yeah.
So I do think, and when you look at like the plate discipline metrics, he's pitching in the zone a lot. He's not really generating many chases and really not many whiffs at all. His whiff rate is only 23.1% overall. Yeah. League average is 24.9%. That's whiffs per swing. So, it's like, he needs to figure out a way to get more chases or a way to miss more bats in the zone. And right now he's not good. So that very good start. I think overall promising. When you're talking about chasing the upside with Boz, that's where I think the questions come in.
Yeah. Again, I would still bet on him figuring out that slider for next season. He's an interesting one. I wonder how just the fantasy industry will project Shane Boz or where they'll draft him for next season, because we all see the same things that you're talking about. The fact the underlying numbers don't look great, but again, this was a pitcher that had a ton of prospect pedigree. So I think most people will probably have that in the back of their mind as well with Shane Boz for next season. Talking about this season with Shane Boz, he does face the Blue Jays later on this week, and then it looks like he'll be at Boston the final week of the season. And typically I would not like starting a pitcher in Boston, but Shane Boz just pitched really well against them in this start. I think it's probably okay for next
I think it's okay. I don't think it's a must start situation, but I think it's fine if you don't have a better option. And the last week of the season is always tough. A lot of bad pitchers are probably going to be out there just because, some guys will get bumped. And so, yeah, I think he's probably fine.
And I do wonder if by the time he makes that start, the Red Sox right now are 5 games out of a wild card spot. Once they're officially eliminated, if they are, there's still a chance they can make it. Do they start to shut some guys down? Do they kind of roll out the B, the C lineup, something like that? So, that could potentially help Shane Boz the final week as well. Another pitcher I could see you streaming in the final week, Griffin Canning. He did what we wanted Reed Detmers to do yesterday against the White Sox, which obviously did not come to fruition. But this was a great start for Griffin Canning. 6 shutout innings, 6 strikeouts, 15 whiffs on 88 pitches. He only allowed 2 hard hits in this game. The secondaries were dominant. Both the slider and the changeup had 5+ whiffs each. And obviously the last start out was dreadful. And typically we're not excited about starting Griffin Canning. And, the overall numbers this year are really bad. But he's 18% rostered. And he's at the White Sox again next week. So, same pitcher, same opponent, 2 times in a row. I usually don't like that. But, Chris, it's the White Sox. I can totally see using Griffin Canning again next week.
So I feel like this has been the trend lately with the White Sox. We have one pitcher that we're excited to stream against the White Sox. It was Reed Detmers this week. It was Spencer Arrighetti a couple weeks ago. And the guy we're excited to stream against the White Sox falls on their face. And then the next scrubby guy who comes up is great against them. It feels like this has happened like 3 or 4 different times in the past month. It's been very frustrating. I think Griffin Canning is bad.
I do too, by the way.
I don't particularly think there's anything Griffin Canning does at this point especially well. He's got like the slider and changeup are decent swing and miss pitches, but if he misses, he tends to get hit really, really hard on both of them. And so I am not going to sit here and tell people they should stream Griffin Canning. If you want to, that is between you and whoever you pray to. But I'm not going to be the one to tell you. Like, I think Reed Detmers is a much better pitcher than Griffin Canning, despite all the Reed Detmers of it all. And so I think there's a very good chance Griffin Canning gets completely bombed. And I'm not going to be the one to tell anyone to start him.
Who would you rather use the final week? Shane Boz at Boston or Griffin Canning at the White Sox?
Shane Boz, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of close for me. I think I would lean Boz, but I think both are fine streamers for next week. Totally understand you wanting to have nothing to do with Griffin Canning, but man, it's just White Sox are so bad.
Can I give you one more? Oh my goodness gracious. I know you've got a couple more listed.
Yeah, I've got like a whole list of shout outs here, but go for it.
Hunter Goodman, baby.
Take that, Scott.
2 games this week. 2 ding dongs for Hunter Goodman. Let's go. He's probably going to go hitless the rest of the week.
Yeah, I mean,
but it doesn't matter.
This home run, by the way, for Hunter Goodman, 107.5 exit velocity, 441 feet. An 11 games since returning in September, 257 batting average, 5 homers, 983 OPS for Hunter Goodman. 10% rostered, 6 games in cores next week. If you need a second catcher, Hunter Goodman is your guy.
I'm starting him in one league, like a league that I'm competing for first place in. So I'm there.
Some, oh my goodness gracious, shout outs of the night to the Tigers. We were talking beforehand. Since August 11th, 24-10, the Detroit Tigers. They are a game and a half out of a wild card spot, which clearly I don't think they expected to be here because they traded away Jack Flaherty at the trade deadline. But, lineup's been hitting. Tarek Skubal's been doing his thing. Bullpen's been much better lately. So, yeah, man.
Olsen's back.
Shout out to the Tigers. Let's see.
I think we noticed, was it last week?
Yeah, I think last week we saw they were like, 3.5 games out of the lock.
Yeah, they were like, they've been hitting well. Yeah, it's been I'm happy. I'm happy because the Royals and the Tigers were probably the two non-Dodgers, obviously, teams this offseason that actually tried to get a lot better. And you can say, whether the signings were smart, Kenta Maeda not working out so well. But at least they went for it and are being rewarded. And I like to see that because it's good when teams actually are trying in the offseason rather than waiting until February to sign guys as much of a discount as possible.
Especially these smaller, mid-market teams.
Mhm.
I guess you could probably just say small markets for the Tigers and Royals, teams that typically do not spend in free agency. Royals bring in Seth Lugo, Michael Wacha. The Tigers bring in Jack Flaherty, who obviously they traded away, but it worked out for as long as they had him. And also, the Kenta Maeda of it all, which didn't work out. But hey, man, they're hot, and I'm rooting for them. Let's go Tigers. Bobby Witt Jr. is up to 30-30, the first shortstop in MLB history with multiple 30-30 seasons, which I just couldn't really wrap my brain around.
Yeah.
How is that possible? But it's a real stat. It's a real thing. So
I guess, did A-Rod, did he only do it when he was a third baseman, or did he just never get a second 30-30 season? Because he went 40-40.
Yeah. My guess is the steals probably trailed off.
Yep. Nope. Second highest steals was 29.
Yeah. So
that's a little surprising. Yeah.
And Bobby Witt Jr., by the way, only 24 years old. So shout out to that. I see you put here Francisco Lindor also 4 steals away from doing it in consecutive seasons.
A bit at this, it felt like a lock,
right?
5 days ago. And now it feels like a pretty long shot, but would be cool if he got there.
Yeah, that is pretty annoying for Francisco Lindor. Chris, did you see Jose Altuve take his sock and shoe off to show the umpire that he actually fouled the ball off of his foot?
So were you watching this game before that?
Yes.
There was the weird pitch clock violation that wasn't a pitch clock violation before that, the half inning before that, where Josh Hader disengaged, but they hit him with a pitch clock violation. They had to review it to see. It was a weird inning for the home plate umpire where he pretty clearly botched two plays in a row because that ball definitely hit Jose Altuve's foot.
Yeah.
And I guess they can't review that.
It's there's
a weird loophole in the rule that you can't review whether a ball was foul or fair or not.
Yeah. I mean, look, baseball's getting there in terms of, some of the advancements that they're doing. I think once we get maybe not a complete ABS system, automatic balls and strikes, but just the ability for hitters to challenge pitches. We've seen some of that in the minor leagues. Just things like this, it's just so obvious. We have the technology.
Low hanging fruit.
Let's just get the call right. Let's do things the right way. That disengagement was kind of weird too, because I'm pretty sure you can't use a disengagement as a way to not get a pitch timer against you. Josh Hader did it anyway. So
yeah, I'll be honest, I don't quite understand the ins and outs of all of that, but
clearly the umpire didn't either. The way he announced it, rule check. That's what he announced to the everyone in the what rule check?
And
dude, you're the umpire. You're supposed to know the rules.
I guess you can't take your shoes off. That is frowned upon. Or maybe it was the shoe would have been fine, but taking the sock off. Maybe that's what crossed the line for the umpire when he tossed Jose Altuve. But that was it was a good acting job from Jose Altuve too, because once he takes his shoe off and he starts walking, he gets tossed, he starts walking back to the dugout. You can see there's a point where he's like, "Oh, I gotta sell it."
He's like,
that
limping.
hurts. So he was like a big exaggerated limp, and then he's just like, "This is stupid. I'm gonna walk normal."
Yeah. The low-hanging fruit here, by the way, for Altuve. He can take his sock and shoe off, but he can't take his jersey off.
We get it. We get it.
Yep. Oh my goodness gracious! Lineup of the night. Gonna highlight my Yankees. There were other teams more. Yeah, I know. Homer, Frank. Yeah. Put up 10 runs, but they did it against Brian Wu, who's been like one of the best pitchers in baseball for the past like 2 months of the season. Juan Soto wanted to shout out 40th home run of the season, also the 200th of his career. He's also homered in every MLB ballpark at just 26 years old. So that is pretty amazing. Soto and Judge both have 40 home runs. They become the third pair of Yankee teammates to accomplish that feat. Ruth and Gehrig did it 3 times, and Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle did it once back in 1961.
Here's a fun fact. I was doing some Brent Rooker research today for tomorrow's newsletter.
He's been the talk of the town on this podcast.
Yeah, I've got like 1,400 words where I'm still not quite sure what to make of Brent Rooker. But one thing I did notice is he never homers on pitches up in the zone. It has happened 3 times all season where he has homered on a pitch in the top third of the strike zone. For the league, about 25% of all home runs come on pitches in the top third of the strike zone. So only 3 of 38 for Brent Rooker. Aaron Judge, only 4 of 53. That kind of makes sense. He just doesn't see many pitches in the top of the strike zone because pitchers aren't used to throwing that high. He's a very tall person. Juan Soto, 18 of 40 have come in the top third of the strike zone. I thought that was interesting that him and Judge are kind of on opposite ends of the extreme spectrum in that regard. Juan Soto just feasting on high pitches this season. Aaron Judge never homers off of them.
Speaking of Judge, by the way, 2 for 4 with 4 more RBI. He's up to 136 on the season. Jason Dominguez launched his first home run of the season, and in 7 games since being recalled, a very small sample size, only batting 167. The plate discipline's been nice so far. 4 walks to 2 strikeouts for Dominguez. And I mentioned they did all this damage off Brian Wu. I guess you could say he was due for a bad start because his previous 10 before this, it's a 2.34 ERA and a .78 whip. Gives up 7 earned runs, but still did rack up 7 strikeouts, 20 whiffs on 94 pitches. Feels like he just got hit by a buzzsaw here.
Yeah, I mean, the Yankees certainly are capable of doing this to anyone. The one thing with Brian Wu, though, is he is showing more strikeout ability lately, and that's a good thing. But I think from what we've seen, I don't know if I expect like great strikeout numbers ever from him. He just pitches too much in the strike zone, pitches to contact too much. I think like up average, maybe slightly above average is what I'd expect from Brian Wu at the high end. So he really has had to be an extreme outlier in terms of quality of contact he gives up. I looked this up just now. Over the past 2 seasons, he has a 316 expected WOBA on contact. Only one pitcher who has faced at least 500 batters over the past 2 seasons, besides Brian Wu, has a mark even below 330, and he's at 316. I believe Justin Steele has the 3rd lowest, and it's like 337 or something. So even if we expect him to be an outlier in that regard, there's probably a decent amount of regression coming. Like he could be the best pitcher in baseball at limiting hard contact and still see 20 to 30 points of WOBA regression. And so a start like this, and then, I think it was 7 hard hit balls on 15 balls in play, 7 batted balls with at least a 680 XBA for Brian Wu. It's one of those things where you never want to overreact to one start, but he does need to be such an outlier in that regard that it's worth noting when he does actually get hit hard.
And I would imagine a team like the Yankees are an especially bad matchup for him because he pitches a lot in the zone, and obviously they have very disciplined hitters who take advantage of mistakes within the zone. So, guys like Soto and Judge, and that's exactly what we saw here. So I think just all things considered, a bad matchup for Wu, and obviously the Yankees took advantage here. Big thanks to everyone still watching and listening at this point in the season. We do greatly appreciate you. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. YouTube.com/fantasybaseball today. Not going anywhere in the offseason. Obviously, we will lower the frequency of how often we do this podcast. Like 2 podcasts per week from basically October through December. And then once the new year starts up, we'll go up to 3 podcasts per week. February, we get up to 4, so on and so forth. But we will still be here doing podcasts. So make sure to subscribe. If you enjoy the audio podcast, feel free to drop us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. Let's take our first break. And when we return, we'll hit some news and notes right after this. Welcome back in news and notes. Stephen Kwan was placed on the IL due to back discomfort, and he was out of the lineup, I believe, for 5 straight games before this happened. Originally listed as body fatigue, but now back discomfort. And can he be ready for the postseason for the Guardians? Because if not, that's a pretty big loss for them.
Yeah, I don't know. We're probably a little more than 2 weeks out from whenever the postseason is about to start, so.
Yeah, I guess if it's like retroactive, he probably could be back, but will he be 100%? I don't know. That's a pretty big question there.
They are pretty much locked in, right? Yeah, they're 5 games up. Yeah,
I would say so. Angel Martinez has started and led off 4 games in a row for the Guardians in Stephen Kwan's place. He has multiple hits in 3 of those and could be worth a look in deeper 5 outfielder leagues. Again, that's Angel Martinez. O'Neal Cruz has missed 2 straight due to a left ankle soreness. Hunter Green threw 50 pitches over a 3-inning simulated game Tuesday. He could be ready to return this Sunday against the Pirates. Bo Bichette was reinstated from the IL. He was in the lineup batting second. He finished 2 for 5 with an RBI. His first game since July 19th. He's been out quite a while due to a calf strain, just a lingering calf strain that's derailed his entire season. The Giants placed Matt Chapman on the paternity list, which means he'll miss between 1 and 3 days. Tyler Fitzgerald returned to the lineup after missing 3 straight with lower back tightness. Colt Keith was removed.
Rocked a platinum sombrero, I believe, in this one. 4 strikeouts. Golden sombrero. 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. So not a great sign for him.
Oof. Yeah, that's that was Tyler Fitzgerald. Yeah, 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. Yeah. Yeah, he has not been as good over the past month or so, which, I think at least you and Scott, you were much more adamant about, it's not going to last forever here with Tyler Fitzgerald. Colt Keith was removed Tuesday night due to a right shoulder injury. Jordan Westberg took batting practice on Tuesday and is on track to return for the final week of the season and would be a big boost for the Orioles' postseason hopes as well. Although, can he pitch in the bullpen? I don't know. That's where they need the most help. Speaking of which, Orioles GM Mike Elias said it's possible Grayson Rodriguez temporarily pitches out of the bullpen when he returns. He's currently on the IL with a right lat strain, but we're just running out of season. So it's going to be tough for him to build up in time. And I think it makes a lot of sense, man. If they have the confidence in Grayson Rodriguez, throw him in the closer role.
Yeah.
For the postseason, like, why not?
Yeah, I mean, Kimbrel looks cooked, so
real bad.
Yeah,
Dominguez has been okay, but
I just think they could use another big arm out there for sure.
100%, yeah.
Because Kimbrel gave up 6 more runs in 2/3 of an inning today. Yeah.
Is this it? Is this the end of the line for Craig Kimbrel?
I mean, I feel like we've done that before, and he comes out and has 4 good months the next year. So
yeah,
I don't know. But yeah, it certainly looks like it.
Hall of Famer?
Probably. He's got to be like top 10-ish in career saves, right?
Yeah.
I would think so.
He's been really, really good for a long time.
Yeah, he's been really good. It's like he's probably still like 250 short of Mariano Rivera. He's 5th all time in saves, 212 below Mariano Rivera. I struggle with it just because, like, he's thrown 100 fewer innings than Billy Wagner in his career. And I think Billy Wagner should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But it's taken a while for him to even get close. I think he's pretty close the last couple of years.
I think he'll get in. Billy
I
Wagner.
think he'll get in, but like he's going to be kind of the new low bar in terms of innings for a Hall of Fame closer. And yeah, Kimbrel, I lean yes.
It'll be close. I think, if it happens, it'll be like 8th, 9th, 10th ballot, something like that for Craig Kimbrel. Tanner Houck is on track to start Wednesday against the Rays. He was scratched from his previous start due to a dead arm. Nick Lodolo will not return this season. He'll end up missing the final 5 weeks due to a sprained finger, and he finishes with a 4.76 ERA, a 120 whip, over a strikeout per inning, but apparently was pitching through that finger injury for some time. I still think there's a lot of upside with Nick Lodolo, but there also has been a lot of inconsistencies so far in his career. Pete Fairbanks and Jeffrey Springs will not return this season. Fairbanks out with a lat injury, Springs with left elbow fatigue. Dalton Varsho was placed in the IL with a shoulder strain. Turns out he needs surgery on his rotator cuff, and we'll get that done as soon as possible. The Blue Jays placed Will Wagner on the 60-day IL with left knee inflammation. And some names we have not heard in a while, Sandy Alcantara and Yuri Perez. Alcantara threw live batting practice on Tuesday, his first time facing hitters since he underwent Tommy John surgery in October of last year. Should be ready for spring training, assuming no setbacks. And Yuri Perez threw light toss on flat ground Tuesday, his first time throwing since he underwent Tommy John surgery back in April. He's a name to remember in keeper leagues. Obviously, you're holding on to him in dynasty leagues. My guess is we'll see Yuri Perez in the second half of next year.
Yeah, I think June in the absolute best case scenario, but technically the timetable is like 12 to 15 months, but it does feel like it's closer to 15 more often than not the last couple of years. So yeah, I wouldn't expect him until the summer.
Especially for a young pitcher that is this electric, who throws this hard, for a team that will not be competing in 2025. So.
Yeah, and I mean, he's going to be 22 shortly after opening day. There's no need to rush.
Yeah, no need whatsoever. Let's take a look at some waiver wire pitchers who could be options for the final week. We already spoke about Shane Baz and Griffin Canning. 4 other names on the list. Gavin Williams bounced back with a solid start up against the Twins. 5 innings, 7 strikeouts, 16 whiffs on 89 pitches. And completely changed his pitch mix through a ton of cutters in this one, and clearly it worked. Frankie Montas, a mixed start up against the Phillies, 5 2/3 innings, 3 runs, 10 strikeouts with 20 whiffs on 100 pitches. 9 starts with the Brewers. It's a 3.55 ERA and a 1.18 whip, over a strikeout per inning for Frankie Montas. Tyler McGill, a strong start up against the Nationals. 6 innings, 1 unearned run with 4 strikeouts, and he's looked good in 2 starts since returning. Lance Lynn, a quality start up against the Pirates. 6 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts. He also has looked good in 2 starts since returning. The matchups for next week, Lance Lynn at the Rockies. Tyler McGill is at the Brewers, which
don't love that.
Frankie Montas is on the other side of that. He faces the Mets, and Gavin Williams is home against the Astros. So, all right, probably not.
Yeah, I don't really love any of those guys. And then obviously we're at the point now where that's probably the final start for all of these guys, right? Maybe they have one more after that. But
no, those are the starts for next week, the final week of the season. So
okay, that's
those
right.
Will be their last starts. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I would take Baz and Canning over all of them, to be honest.
Yeah, Baz for sure. I again am not going to recommend.
How can I get you to endorse Griffin Canning? Like, who do I have to put him against?
I might start Lance Lynn at Colorado ahead of Griffin Canning. I don't know. Like, none of his pitches move anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the thin air going to do to them?
Lots of fast.
I have no idea if that logic makes any sense. I just prefer him to Griffin Canning.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to, like, McGill, I like what we've seen in 2 starts since returning. Velocity has been up. He's always kind of had some upside, but
yeah,
at the Brewers next week, like, Montas is doing some interesting things too, but the Mets, I'll put Baz at the top of the list and then Canning for me.
I think Montas is probably second on that list for me, actually.
Okay. Yeah, if nothing else, he's getting lots of whiffs. He has 10 strikeouts in 2 of his last 4 starts, I think. So, yeah, getting whiffs there for.
You know what? Lance Lynn, career 2.36 ERA at Coors Field in 5 starts. Start him ahead of Griffin Canning. Let's go.
I don't know. Let's do a little friendly wager for next week. Canning versus Lance Lynn.
All right, let's do it.
What do we got?
I don't know.
Winner gets a beer. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some deep league waiver wire hitters for the final week of the season. And just starting off with some outfielders, Mike Yastrzemski has been hitting for power as of late. Last 22 games, he's got 7 home runs and an OPS around 850. He's 15% rostered, only 1 lefty on the schedule for next week. Grant McCray, his teammate, 2 for 2 with 2 walks, 2 steals, and 3 runs scored in this one. And in 27 games with the Giants, he's only batting .239, but he's got 5 homers and 5 steals. Hits the ball extremely hard. Also has a 40% strikeout rate. Scott laughs every time I bring up Jesus Sanchez, so I'll do it when he's not on the show. 5 for 5 with 2 doubles, 2 runs, 3 RBI in this one. And 6 games next week, all righties. I can see it working out for Jesus Sanchez. Garrett Mitchell has been raking when he plays. He's not really someone we've talked about, but 2 for 4 with a triple and an RBI. Last 16 games for Garrett Mitchell. Batting .306, 4 homers, 3 steals, and OPS over 1,100 for Garrett Mitchell. Davis Schneider has homered in 3 straight, and Leody Taveras had himself a huge game. 3 for 5 with a sock and a shoe, his 11th homer and 20th steal. Deep league stuff here, Chris. I think all are available in 80% or more of CBS leagues. So like 15 team, 5 outfielder leagues, but any names stand out here. Yaz, McCray, Jesus Sanchez, Garrett Mitchell, Davis Schneider, and Leody Taveras.
Yeah, Yastrzemski is fine, and Jesus Sanchez against, you said 6 lefties?
6 righties.
6 righties. That would be much worse if it was 6 lefties. That would also be really unlikely. Although the Pirates did open the season with like 6 straight lefties or something wild like that, if you remember, way back in the halcyon days of April. But yeah, Jesus Sanchez has a 799 OPS. He's hitting .273 against righties. So I think that's like, if Scott put him on the sleeper hitters next week, that wouldn't be a terrible choice. He's good enough against righties.
He won't do it.
He can't hit lefties, Jesus Sanchez. And so even like if those righties don't last long in the games, he's probably going to see a lefty or 2. But yeah, I think Jesus Sanchez is probably fine. I don't have much interest in anyone else. I think I finally dropped Leody Taveras in a AL only league recently. So
yeah.
Garrett
Mitchell's kind of interesting because like he's the hottest of this group. The problem is that he started only 9 of the past 15 games, and they're just not playing him against lefties. They have 3 lefties on the schedule.
Yeah, that's the thing. And like, you want to say like, oh, in a daily lineups league, but even then, if he's only going to start 3 of those games, is that even that good of a choice for using your roster spot for? I don't think so. Yeah.
Let's talk about Luis Angel Acuna, who had himself a big game in Francisco Lindor's place. 3 for 4 with his first career home run. He added 3 runs and 2 RBI. 2 hard hits in this game. Huge exit velocities. A double, 109.5 exit velocity. And the home run was 103.2, 414 feet. Didn't really see much of this in the minors, so it's like, all right, very small sample, take it with a grain of salt. But, if he can finish strong, maybe gives us a little bit of optimism as like a very deep sleeper for next season.
Yeah, Luis Angel Acuna has, like, if you look at him, he kind of looks like Ronald Acuna, just like shrunken. He's like 5'9", I think.
It's like for Halloween when you get the bite-sized candy to
get exactly. But like he's got the same swing.
Yeah.
He just like 109 miles per hour is right around his season-long max exit velo. So the fact that he got into that this early into his major league career, I suppose bodes well. He's a very aggressive swinger, not great plate discipline, makes a lot of contact. But yeah, it was a pretty rough season for him, and kind of like he looked like a breakout early last season. Got traded for, was he in the Verlander deal or the Scherzer deal?
He was in the Scherzer deal.
Looked like a really good pickup for the Mets, then struggled when he got to AA for them, had a really tough season at AAA. I think a lot of prospect people have soured on him. I think there are interesting skills here, but I can't say he's anything more than a deep league shortstop at this point.
Yeah. And then for deep league catchers, we already spoke about Hunter Goodman. Again, he's only 10% rostered. 6 games in Coors Field next week. So just if he's not on Scott's sleeper hitters list on Friday,
We
Chris,
riot.
we will riot indeed. How have these 5 hitters been since returning to the majors? Fernando Tatis, 2-4. I believe he wound up 2-for-5 in that game with a steal and 2 runs scored. 13 games since returning, a 308 batting average, 4 homers, 11 runs, 2 steals, and OPS over 900. He's basically been Fernando Tatis, which is crazy because he's been out for so long. It kind of surprised me, Chris, that in the sample we have this year, 93 games, he's only on pace for 29 homers and 16 steals. That's a 150 game pace. But even if we bump it up to a full season pace, it's like barely over 30 homers, close to 20 steals. That's a good season, but is it a first round player? I don't know. It kind of feels like it isn't.
No, and I don't know if you guys talked about this last night, but Scott did his, way too early ranking of the first 2 rounds. He did have Tatis 14th in Roto.
That sounds right.
It sounds right. It feels a little high at first blush. I think I would take Julio Rodriguez ahead of him. Corbin Carroll's a tough one. Some pitchers are, I think the range is right. I think not first round, but close. And the key thing there is the underlying numbers are still very, very good for Fernando Tatis. And his expected WOBA on the season, 394. That's a little bit worse than the 2020-2021 peak for him. But the strikeout rate is much lower. He still hits the ball really, really hard, really consistently. So, yeah, I still think Fernando Tatis has top 5 upside. I think the biggest question is whether the speed is going to come back, because he has only stolen 2 bases in 13 games since coming back, which I guess that's not a terrible pace. So the speed just kind of hasn't been there all year. And his sprint speed is down to 76th percentile. Is that because of the fibula injury? Was that limiting him before he went on the IL?
I would guess yes.
Yeah, I think they said as much. I think there was a quote that it was something that he had been dealing with for a little while. So maybe that's the explanation here. But I think he's, for the most part, still a sub-elite but very, very, very good player for Roto. And honestly, with the strikeout rate improvements, probably not a big gap between his Roto and his head-to-head performance this season.
Yeah. If I'm just way too early projections for next year for Tatis, 275, 25 to 30 homers, 20 to 25 steals, pretty good counting stats. I feel like that's a pretty fair projection for him, which,
it feels a little low.
Yeah, you think so?
I think like 285, 30 to 35 homers. And obviously the ceiling is 40 to 45 and a 310 batting average.
My only thing is that since he's returned from all the steroid suspension and PED suspension and
shoulder and wrist
coming back from the power hasn't been the same. So he was
this year the underlying numbers are much better.
191 ISO last year, 202 ISO this year. I don't know.
It's not great.
Yeah, kind of feels like a 25 to 30 home run hitter, but
sure.
Yeah. How has Junior Caminero been? 2-for-4 with his 4th home run in 33 games with the Rays. He's batting .256, 4 home runs, 745 OPS. Plate discipline is mostly fine. He's been a little bit too aggressive, I would say. Ground ball rate is a little bit high. He's also super young, and this is like his first legit taste in the major, so I don't want to overreact too much to it. But Chris, what's been your takeaway from Junior Caminero so far?
So this is kind of an aesthetic comp, but watching him today, he hit a home run today, right? That was where the highlight came from. Yeah, and it was like one of those ones that was like way above the strike zone. He's got a pretty flat bat path. And it sort of reminds me of Yandy Diaz. And what we've seen so far is kind of Yandy Diaz-esque, where he hits the ball hard. Plate discipline's not quite that good, but whose is. But he tends to hit a lot of line drives and a lot of ground balls and not a ton of fly balls yet. It's an elite player, elite young player, 21 years old, great minor league numbers. I think it's worth betting on. The fact that he's holding his own is, I think, a very good sign. I do wonder if the power is going to play up immediately as like difference making, because I do think, the underlying skills could get to, it could be 30 plus raw power, raw homer upside, but it might be more like 20 projecting for 2025.
Yeah, which is pretty much spot on. If you look at the Fangraphs prospect grades, the 20 to 80 scale, they have his raw power right now at 70, but his in-game power only at 50.
Yeah.
So that seems to line up with what we're talking about here. If I'm just conservatively, again, projecting for next season, I'd probably expect something like 20, low 20s in home runs for Caminero. But if he figures out, pulling the ball, putting it in the air a little bit, I mean, we could very easily see like 30 plus home run power from Junior Caminero. What about Tristan Casas? 1 for 2 with his 9th home run. He has been sitting out against lefties lately. He's only started 8 of the past 13 games, and in 29 games since returning, 247 batting average, 3 home runs, 11 RBI, and OPS under 700 with a 37% strikeout rate. I'm not sure how many people that are competing for anything are still using Tristan Casas at this point. You probably could get away from him for the rest of this season. He's just missed so much time. I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think I'm still going to be really excited about Casas for next season too.
So the one thing I would say is last year he held his own against lefties, but that was with like a 33% strikeout rate, 32% strikeout rate. This year, it's only 52 plate appearances. Last year was only 97. The 712 OPS is not bad for a lefty against lefties. Like that's playable. 20 strikeouts and 52 plate appearances is a problem. Yeah. And he hasn't gotten as many opportunities this year. Obviously, lately, he's just not playing against them. You can't get better if you don't face lefties. And so that is my one concern, is that are the Red Sox viewing him more like a platoon bat? I think that would be a mistake to do with a 24-year-old with his kind of skill set. But that if I have a concern, it's that.
What about Max Muncy? 3 for 5 with 2 doubles, 5 RBI, and his first stolen base. 24 games since returning from the IL, 250 batting average, 6 homers, OPS over 900. He's hitting tons of fly balls. He's pulling it. He's hitting the ball extremely hard. The barrel rate is there. He's another one. He's basically been Max Muncy. It's a little frustrating because I would have loved to see what he could do over a full season in that stacked lineup in terms of just the home runs and the counting stats.
Yeah.
And man, if he could stay healthy for next year, it's been hard to bet on health for Max Muncy.
Yep.
But I mean, everything in this recent stretch says that, man, he still could be an elite hitter, elite power hitter, at least.
The counting stats are pretty bonkers. In the 64 games he's played, 45 RBI, 15 homers, 40 runs. Just doing a little head math. That sounds like 40 homers, 100 runs, like 110 RBI. I don't think you should actually expect that from Max Muncy, but let's not forget he hit 36 homers last season. And that's like, he was dreadful for the first 2/3 of the season in 2022, but basically since like August or September of 2022, he's just been Max Muncy. And I know we expect him to slow down at some point. We haven't really seen it. I don't know. He might just be really, really good, and it might just be worth taking whatever injury discount you can get on him, because if he goes late enough, and I don't know, like just eyeballing it feels like this is a guy who could easily fall outside of the top 175 on draft day next year. You get to a point. I've made this point about Byron Buxton in the past. You get to a point where I don't care how much time a guy misses. If he's 175th overall in the draft and I get 55 really good games out of him, I'll figure it out. Like it's a reason to not draft a player in the top 100, but to avoid a guy with that kind of upside, if he falls closer to 200, I think that's a mistake.
The full season pace for Max Muncy this year, 37 home runs, 113 RBI. So
There you go.
still pretty much on track with what he's been doing. Jordan Walker hit another home run, 1 for 3 with his 4th homer, and it was hit pretty hard. 108 exit velocity, 425 feet in 16 games since returning to the Cardinals. 250 batting average, 4 homers, 1 steal, and OPS right around 800. He's been solid, 33% rostered. If you're just looking forward the final week, the Cardinals have 6 games, 3 in Coors Field. So 5 outfielder leagues, I can get with it on Jordan Walker for the final week.
Yeah, and he has continued to hit the ball really hard. At AAA, the overall numbers were not great, but if you were looking at the trends, he was starting to hit more barrels, hit more line drives, hit more fly balls to the pull side over the final month before he was initially called up back in was that early August when he first got called up for a few days and then they sent him back down?
Yep.
And now he's starting to do that at the major league level. Still striking out too much, 30% strikeout rate. It's even higher since he came back, right? 35%. But I don't know. It's one of those situations where he swings and misses a decent amount, but like his in-zone contact rate this season is 85%. It's actually solidly better than league average right now. So it's mostly a problem of not swinging. He only swings at 66% of pitches in the strike zone. If he can find a way to be more selectively aggressive, I still think the raw skills here for Jordan Walker are really impressive. And is he 23 yet?
I don't think
He's 22 and 119 days. I think he is younger than like several of the top 10 picks from this year's MLB draft. So that's something to keep in mind with Jordan Walker. I can't imagine, unless he just goes bonkers over the next 12 days, that he's going to cost much for 2025 drafts. I think it's reasonable to be skeptical about any young Cardinals player. They have not had a great track record lately, but I will be drafting Jordan Walker as a sleeper in 2025.
And if there's any chance you could buy low on him in Dynasty, I still would look into doing that as well. My guess is whoever has Jordan Walker in that format, they invested a lot to get him initially, so they probably won't give him up for 10 cents on the dollar, but it doesn't hurt to try. So
but maybe 20 cents.
Yeah, certainly could try. Let's take our final break. When we return, we'll get back into the rest of Tuesday's action. We'll do that right after this.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Welcome back in. Yesterday, we got letdowns from Reed Detmers and Matthew Boyd. Today, it was Nick Pivetta and Albert Suarez. Nick Pivetta and Reed Detmers, by the way, they are the same dude. It is just so crazy how often we get sucked back into believing in these players, and then they just crush us in the most inopportune time.
Do you know your Aesop's fables?
No chance.
The Viper and the Farmer, I think, is one of them. And it's like a kind farmer sees a viper out in the snow and it's dying. So he takes it into his jacket and revives it. And then the viper bites him. And I think some version of it end up with the viper going like, you knew what I was when you took me in or whatever. Yeah. That's how I feel about Nick Pivetta. Like
100%.
Like, okay, at the beginning of this season, you could talk yourself into he figured something out last year. He started throwing that sweeper in the second half, and he's a different guy. Once it became clear that he was not, in fact, a different guy, start him at your own peril. He's useful. Reed Detmers has been useful at times. But you always know this is a very likely possibility every time Nick Pivetta goes out on the mound, and just can you avoid the landmines enough to win? This should be a good matchup.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just who Nick Pivetta is and has always been.
And it's just even more frustrating when Nick Pivetta, it just feels like this happens so often where he gets blown up in your lineup. You take him out for like a month. He pitches amazing during that month.
His 4 starts before this were awesome.
Yeah. And then you put him back in your lineup for a 2-star week and boom, he gets crushed. Like, it just rinse and repeat. I feel like we could say something similar about Albert Suarez, who I think the last time we touted him was against the White Sox like a month ago. He was awful in that start. Previous 7 starts before this one, 2.43 ERA, 1.13 WHIP. We're like, all right, Albert Suarez is pitching well. He's got 2 starts, good matchups. And what happens? 3 1/3 innings, 4 runs, 3 strikeouts. He does get the Tigers later this week, but I mean, it's just, it's been a pretty rough week for some of the 2-star recommendations.
Yeah. Did we recommend Joey Estes as a 2-star pitcher? Because that was pretty bad yesterday.
I don't think we really did, but we were on Detmers, we were on Boyd, and those guys were bad yesterday.
Yeah, look, this is always the problem when we're talking about 2-star streamers or any streamer in general. Like, for the most part, unless it's a player who was recently recalled or was hurt for a long time or some extenuating circumstances, there's a reason these guys are available. Like, if they were helping teams win fantasy baseball games, they wouldn't have been on the wire.
Right.
And, Albert Suarez, like, he had been good the last 7 starts or whatever it was, 2.43 ERA. The underlying skill set has never looked strong here. The case for Suarez was always, if he can be a league average pitcher, the Orioles offense can pick him up and make him more valuable than he otherwise would be. The Orioles offense hasn't been great lately.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. It stinks when this happens, but like, how many reliable pitchers are there right now? 20? How many pitchers can you actually go out there and say, every time they go out, I expect good results? You got to start some crappy pitchers at this point in the season. So that's just the nature of the game. And maybe we should have been hyping Shane Baz more, but he was already 75% rostered. So there was only so much we could do.
Yeah. Let's take a look into that crystal ball again for next year. And as we've done, we continue to do it, taking a way too early look for 2025. Nice. I think I moved my baseball back to another shelf. So I don't have it near me right now, but how do you envision ranking these 5 for next season? Either aces, near aces, whatever you want to call them. Blake Snell, huge start here at the Orioles, 6 shutout innings, 12 strikeouts, 22 whiffs. Cole Reagans, another great one, 7 innings, 1 run, 6 strikeouts, 17 whiffs. Zach Wheeler has turned in 9 straight quality starts, 171 ERA, 0.81 whip during that span. Hunter Brown turned in yet another quality start as well. He has a quality start in 9 of his last 12, and he was at the Padres, 6 innings, 2 runs with 3 strikeouts. And Michael King on the other side of that one, he was great up against the Astros, 7 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts, and he had 14 whiffs in that start. Chris, what do you think? How do you,
are you asking me to rank these 5 relative to one another or give a range for this 5?
You can do both. What I was thinking was just like how are you going to rank them for 2025? But you can also add in, like, I think they're all like top 24 starting pitchers.
Wheeler's number 1 easily. He's a top 3 pitcher and might not be 3. I would go Reagans next of this group. I would have him ahead of Blake Snell. There have been some warning signs down the stretch. Control has been a little iffy over the past 2 months, especially. Velocity has fluctuated. And he's going to be pitching with a 65-plus inning jump from 2023 to 2024. So that's a little scary. But he's made it through it. I don't know how much I want to hold that against him, given everything else happening at starting pitcher right now. I think Cole Reagans is probably in the top 12 discussion. I'm not sure exactly if he's top 12. Blake Snell is 3rd. 20 at starting pitcher. I I never know how to rank Blake Snell. Like, we know there's going to be some awful stretch where people think about dropping him, and there's going to be some stretch where he's the best pitcher in baseball. When is each one going to happen? When is each one going to stop? I don't know. I have no idea. I've never been able to figure out Blake Snell. So I'm going to just say 23rd at starting pitcher. The more I talk about it, the more I talk myself out of him. Michael King is in the same range. It's another one where gigantic jump in innings this season from 2023 raises some red flags for 2025 as far as the ability to stay healthy. He has been, what, a top 5 pitcher since like May 1st? If not actually top 5, probably not far off. He's been incredible. And the overall numbers now look really, really good. So I'm going to say top 24 for Michael King. And then Hunter Brown is probably more like 36.
Yeah.
He feels very Mitch Keller to me. Where like, I never know if he's quite as good as he is at his best. He's got a very wide arsenal, and I always feel pretty good that he's going to figure it out. But I'm not sure I want Hunter Brown to be one of the 2 best pitchers on any pitching staff that I have.
I think that's fair. Yeah. But as your SP3, that
feels fine. Yeah.
Sounds right. Yeah. For Hunter Brown. All right. Let's show a little bit of appreciation for these 3 unsung hitters this season. Shea Langoliers, 2 for 4 with a double dong, 3 RBI, his 3rd multi-home run game of the season. And entering Tuesday, he was a top 8 catcher in both roto and head-to-head points. 28 home runs, 2nd among catchers, 74 RBI, 6th among catchers this season. Ian Happ got off to a slow start, but the numbers are basically where they should be. 249 batting average, 25 homers, 86 runs, 85 RBI, 13 steals, 807 OPS. Enter Tuesday, 53rd overall in roto and 3 fantasy points per game. And Ezekiel Tovar has had quietly a very solid season, 3 for 5 with his 25th home run and overall 266 batting average, the 25 homers, 80 runs, 6 steals, 762 OPS. And entering Tuesday, 80th overall in roto, 2.5 fantasy points per game. Tovar takes a hit there because the plate discipline is awful. But yeah, Tovar, I think, was like a 175 or 200, like top 200 pick, and he's 80th overall. Like that's a huge return on investment. So just 3 hitters that have just chugged along and got it done. Tovar, Ian Happ, and Shea Langoliers.
Kind of stunned that Ezekiel Tovar has not been significantly better at Coors Field than the alternative this year. Actually, has just been better on the road than at Coors Field, at least entering this start. 752 OPS at home, 755 away. But I think you generally assume he will be better at Coors Field next year. So the question is he a 750-ish OPS bat? And then you get the Coors Field bump? Because that makes him a lot more interesting. That could potentially get him into a top 12 discussion at shortstop in a roto league. I tend to think it's probably more like he's a 700 OPS bat and a 755 OPS bat at Coors, but reasonable people can disagree. In my first run of catcher rankings, I had Shea Langoliers number 7 ahead of JT Realmuto.
Wow.
I don't know how I feel about that one. Realmuto has not run at all since suffering that injury to his knee in May. I think he's attempted 2-3 steals, something like that. Obviously had surgery. If he's not going to run, JT Realmuto feels like a pretty middling catcher, and I think Shea Langoliers has shown this year that he's a little bit more than that. Like there may not be that much separating him and Cal Raleigh.
They feel very similar in my opinion.
Yeah. I feel more confident in Raleigh's power. He's a 30 homer bat. Shea Langoliers, I know he has 28 right now, but feels more like a 25 homer guy. But that's really valuable at catcher, even with a bad batting average. And then Ian Happ he always just ends up doing Ian Happ things. It's always like the shape of his production is always a little bit different. Like some years he runs a little more, some years he hits for more power, some years it's very on base percentage heavy, but he always ends up being pretty much this. And I don't know. He's perfectly solid. His numbers are actually like eerily similar to last season.
Yeah, he is. And I drafted a lot of them this year. Perfect 5 outfielder league player. Someone you just plug in, set it and forget it. He's going to give you the 25 and 15 by the end of the season. This year, the counting stats are, I think, even better than they were.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So just a rock solid player in 5.
He's like a perfect third outfielder. And the problem is in a points league, you can try to upgrade.
Yeah.
In a roto league, though, like that's just rock solid.
100%. Again, that's Ian Happ. Hitter studs being studs here on Tuesday. Shohei Ohtani inches closer to 50-50. He hit his 48th home run of the season. Pete Alonso had himself a huge game, 3 for 5 with a double, 33rd homer, and 5 RBI. Kyle Schwarber having himself a pretty massive September, 364, 7 home runs, 1219 OPS. And Manny Machado continues to hit another home run, I believe his 30th of the season, which is just, it's pretty crazy. No, 27th. But he's close to it. And obviously, just where he started the season with the elbow injury to where he's kind of finishing up. You know, he's up to a 278 batting average, 802 OPS. Counting stats are awesome. It's big in-season bounce back here for Manny Machado. Some other hitting leftovers, a big game for Willie Castro, 2 for 3 with a sock and a shoe. His 12th home run, 14th steal. He's played a lot this year. Surprised to see the steals have dropped as much as they have from 33 to 14. That is just massive drop, and really makes Willie Castro nothing more than like a deep league fill-in just because of his position eligibility. Lane Thomas has flipped a switch for the Guardians here in September. 317, 5 home runs, 16 RBI, OPS near 1,000 so far in the month. Matt Olson has basically been himself since late July. 52 games, 275, 13 home runs, and OPS over 900. And Wyatt Langford had a huge game, 3 for 4 with 2 walks, 2 doubles, and his 12th home run. Last 35 games for Langford. He's hitting 289, 6 home runs, 6 steals, and an OPS over 800 during that span. Did I mention that Brent Rooker stat about his bat speed on the podcast? I think you told me that beforehand.
Okay, so he's one of 5 players whose bat speed is in the 80th percentile and whose swing length is lower than the 30th percentile. And it's like an interesting group of hitters. It's him, Bobby Witt, Lawrence Butler, Elliot Ramos, and Wyatt Langford was actually one of the other ones. And it's a short, direct swing that is still fast. And one thing that we've learned from the swing data this year is swing length and swing speed are generally pretty correlated. So having a short swing that is fast would seem to be a good thing. And Wyatt Langford certainly starting to show his upside lately. So that's a good thing. Could be a big time breakout next year. You know, might be someone who you get cheaper than last year and ends up actually being much more valuable. Willie Castro, did Willie Castro get hurt in like late June? Because he made the All-Star team, right?
Did he?
That's what I remember. But either way, he made the All-Star team. He had like an 800 OPS at the end of June. And then just stopped running like completely. He got caught stealing 3 times in July, wasn't successful, and had just 4 attempts in 41 games since August 1st. So I don't know if maybe he's just not healthy.
Pro Sports Transactions doesn't have him for any no day-to-day, nothing.
Okay. But his production overall tanked and he stopped running around the end of June. So maybe there's something there.
Mm-hmm. Some bullpen updates for the Twins. Yohan Duran entered in the 8th inning with a 3-run lead, facing 9-1-2 in the. Who were they facing? It was against the Guardians in the Guardians lineup. And then Duran started the 9th inning. He gave up a double and a walk. He struck out Josh Naylor. Griffin wound up getting the final 2 outs for his 9th save of the season. For the Marlins, Jesus Tinoco got the 9th inning with a 4-run lead. He gave up 2 runs on 3 hits, but I think more notably here is just the fact that he pitched in the 9th inning with a lead, so kind of feels like Tinoco is the guy to close things out here for the Marlins. For the Reds, Alexis Diaz got the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. He gave up a hit, but struck out 2 for his 28th save. For the Cardinals, Ryan Helsley struck out 2 for his 45th. For the A's, Mason Miller got the 9th inning with a 2-run lead. He gave up a solo homer, but picked up his 26th save. For the Tigers, Jason Foley pitched a clean 10th inning for his 25th save. And then for the Astros, Josh Hader, in his return to San Diego, entered with a runner on third base in the 8th inning and a wild pitch. He took the blown save, pitched a clean 9th inning, and then the Astros took the lead, and it was Hector Neris who got the save in extra innings for the Astros.
Worth noting that wild pitch, I believe, was the first pitch he threw after a lengthy delay because of that weird pitch clock thing that we were talking about earlier, where like it took like 7 minutes to figure out. So that's extenuating circumstances there, I guess.
To stream or not to stream on Wednesday, we have Dean Kramer facing the Giants, Landon Knack at the Marlins, DJ Hurds is at the Mets, Jose Quintana faces the Nationals, Alec Marsh faces the Tigers, and Cody Bradford up against the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I mean, Knack, talk about guys who really let us down last time they pitched. He was pretty bad. I think he has got to be the top choice, though. I could see another good game from Alec Marsh, but obviously not expecting double-digit strikeouts. Cody Bradford hoping for a bounce back after it was his worst start of the season, right? Last time out.
I would probably bet on it, yeah.
I think DJ Hurst is good. I don't love the matchup against the Mets, but I think he's probably the most talented pitcher on this slate. So if you want to take a flyer on that, I would probably go Knack. I think Knack, Quintana, who I didn't mention, and Hers.
I think I would put Bradford at the top of the list, then Landon Knack. It's a pretty good day, man. Like
That's not terrible, yeah.
Dean Kramer being fine, Quintana, Alec Marsh. Third on the list.
I could see Jacob Junis being okay against Atlanta.
Yeah. I think Quintana's probably third for me. So I'll go Bradford, Knack, and then Quintana. On a Thursday, we have Simeon Woods Richardson at the Guardians. Joey Cantillo faces the Twins. Kumar Rocker up against the Blue Jays. Clark Schmidt is at the Mariners. Zach Littell faces the Red Sox. Javier Assad face each other.
There are a few interesting talents on this list. I think most specifically Edward Cabrera and Tobias Myers, but I hate the matchups for them. I'm starting Kumar Rocker.
Yeah.
I think he's clear top option. I would go Clark Schmidt second, and I would try to avoid everyone else, but maybe Joey Cantillo versus Minnesota. They've been pretty bad for the last month or so.
Yeah. I would go Schmidt at the top and then Kumar Rocker. And
That's reasonable, yeah.
I agree. Don't want to use anyone else on Thursday. If you need an extra streamer, I would say try and get that person in on Wednesday. We are going to wrap there. For Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.